Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. Today I'm sharing the cards I made using Love From Lizi's February 2021 card kit. The theme is So Lucky, and look at these beautiful colors and designs. As I'm recording this voiceover, the kit is still available. I have provided links in the description box if you are interested in the kit, and I will add an update when the kit sells out, since they sell out every single month. So let's go ahead and get started with card number 1. I'm using a card sketch from MFT. This is number 340. If you are interested in any of the sketches I show, I have all of that information on my coordinating blog post. The link is provided in the description box, or you can simply head over to KristieMarcotte.com. For the background on this first card, I have some pattern paper that looks like gold glitter. Has a little bit of white and green sprinkled in there. Now this is smooth pattern paper, so there is no glitter on it. It just has the look of it. For this strip on the left-hand side, I have some white cardstock, and I used the washi tape that's included in the kit and wrapped it around that paper. That way you can see the true color of the washi tape versus putting it over some pattern paper or a darker colored cardstock. So I'm just gonna put my card front onto a card base, leaving that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. And then I'll add one of the peel-offs from the kit. This is a beautiful copper mirror color, and it has gold trim on the edges. So it's super sparkly. I just put one strip between that washi tape and the pattern paper. I used a semicircle die to cut out the other pattern paper and then layered it on a black circle die cut. Since I don't have the matted semicircle die, I just used a basic circle die and then just cut off that bottom so I could still have that 1/8 of an inch of the matted layer showing. For the sentiment, I'm using the word dies that are included. So there's So Lucky. Now the first letter of each of the words is separate from the rest. The kit also includes the outline for the words. So I have some gold mirror paper for the words, and then I'm layering it on some green cardstock. I'm using my tweezers and some liquid adhesive just to make sure I can pick up those tiny pieces and adhere them in place. Then I decided I'm going to layer it one more time on some black cardstock. So I'm just offsetting it slightly, and you'll see that black cardstock peeking out on the top and a little bit on the left-hand side. Then I can try to figure out placement for this sentiment. I didn't want to cover up too many of the images on that pattern paper, but no matter what, I was going to cover up part of it. I also stamped out the rest of the sentiment, so the whole thing is So Lucky to Know You. Use some liquid adhesive to adhere the word lucky, trying to make sure to get it straight. Then I am going to put some scrap cardstock on the left side of the word So, where it goes off of that semicircle die cut. Just have some teeny tiny pieces, and then when I feel it's at the right level, I can attach it using some liquid adhesive. Then I'll add some liquid adhesive to the stamp portion of the sentiment and tuck it in underneath the word lucky. For a finishing touch, I'm going to bring in some of the sequins that are included in the kit, and I'll just use the gold. So I'm going to put 3 of them in the upper right-hand corner. Considered putting a couple in the lower left-hand corner, but I changed my mind. Even though Lizi always adds so many beautiful colors to her sequin mixes, I still tend to use just one color per card. I've tried to use different colors to mix it up, but it never looks right to me. Yet when I see other people do it, it looks just fine. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 1. Now moving on to card number 2. The card sketch is from MFT, it's number 522. I'm using this houndstooth pattern paper that has a border of 4-leaf clovers along the bottom. They're in orange and also green. And then I'll be layering that on some black cardstock and then again on some green pearlescent cardstock, and that's one of the add-ons that Lizi offers this month. I'm adding a few green holographic pinstripe peel-offs to the middle section of all those 4-leaf clovers. I have the medium width in the center, and then I'm putting the thinnest width on either side of the middle one. So I do have them going over the edge just a little bit. I'll wrap the ends around the back, and that'll just make sure they're not going to come off later. So I'll put some ATG on the back of this panel, add it to the black cardstock, and then I'll attach this to that green pearlescent cardstock. You can see I did cut out a heart from the center, and I'll be adding that to the card later. Now I could fill in that gap where the heart is missing, but there's so many layers you can't actually feel where there's a dip from that cutout. So there is that heart, and I'm going to use one of the ephemera pieces that's included in the kit. It's 2 girls with their arms behind their backs, and they're forming a heart with their hands. So it's super sweet. So I'm just gonna attach that right onto that green heart. I know you can't see a lot of that heart, but I like how there's still that green pearlescent finish peeking out from either side of the girls. Now for the sentiment, I've already die cut out the So Lucky and glued it all together just to save on time. I am gonna pop up the 2 main words, and then I've stamped out the rest of the sentiment. So this will be, I'm so lucky to call you friend. I'll try to get placement correct before I attach anything down. And I probably should have put the lucky up just a tiny bit more, since it does cover up part of the T on the word to, but it's not too much. Then I'll attach the word so, and then tuck in the word I'm between the 2 main sentiment words. Instead of all the circles that are indicated on the sketch, I'll be using the wooden 4-leaf clover pieces that are included in the kit. There are 3 different sizes, but I'll be using just the 2 smallest sizes. So I'm also going to do some heat embossing to add some pretty sparkly color. I'll take each of those wooden pieces and press it into a Versamark ink pad, and then I'll sprinkle on the embossing powder. And this is Sparkling Emerald City Embossing Powder by Love From Lizi. While I was heat setting this piece, it slipped out of my tweezers, and it was a loud snap, and it actually startled me. So I don't know if you could tell that I jumped at that point, but all is well. I just picked it up again with my tweezers and continued to heat set it. So I didn't show the process of heat setting all 5 pieces. Now you can't see the lines very well through that sparkling embossing powder, but it's super sparkly and so pretty. So I'm just trying to figure out placement for the 4-leaf clovers. I'm only going to have 5. I'm not having all of those little circle embellishments as indicated on the sketch. To adhere all those wood pieces to my card, I'm using Ranger's Multi-Medium Matte. A couple of them I got way too much adhesive, so I'm just holding another piece up to it. I'll just adhere those all to my card, and then one final finishing touch, I decided to add some sparkle to the wreaths on each of the girls' hair. So I just use a glitter brush for that. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 2. For card number 3, I'm using a sketch from Mojo Monday. This is number 535. I have this beautiful orange and green plaid paper for the background. I'm just going to layer this on some dark orange cardstock. I have some green glitter pattern paper for that smaller rectangle piece, and I'll just layer that on some green pearlescent cardstock. For that thin strip on the left, I'm using the solid green cardstock that's included in the kit. Now before I adhere that green glitter pattern paper, I am going to put a piece of scrap cardstock on the right hand side just to keep everything level. So once I attach that, I'm going to put my card front onto a card base, and I will be leaving that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. I'll be using one of the ephemera pieces. So it's a lady holding a cup of coffee and a 4-leaf clover, and she's looking down so you can see her feet. There's also the same image on the stamp set, so you can color that if you want as well. I have the word lucky cut out of some gold mirror cardstock. I'm just going to attach that to the very lower portion of that green glitter pattern paper. So once I have that adhered, I know where I'll be putting the ephemera piece. But first I'm going to finish the rest of the sentiment, and I'm going to stamp it directly onto the card. So I am going to use my mini MISTI so I can get the placement correct. So I'm trying to line up everything and get it all straight. And I do take a few times, so I did cut out part of that. But now I have it nice and straight, and I'm using some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And I just inked it up a couple times so I had a good solid impression. Now before I adhere the ephemera piece, I will also be using that scrap cardstock and putting it on the upper portion of the ephemera just to keep everything nice and level. After I add those pieces of cardstock, I like to lay it on my card and just run my hand across it to feel if I need to do another layer. So I decided to add a couple small pieces to the very top portion of that ephemera. I'll put some liquid adhesive on the back and adhere it to my card. For finishing touches, I'm going to bring out the glitter enamel dots. These are so beautiful and super sparkly. So this is very interesting. I decided to try to go outside my comfort zone and use two different colors of embellishments. I have the green and some of the orange. Now later when this card was finished, I just couldn't handle those two colors, so I did remove the orange and I swapped it out for that same green color. I did try, but it just doesn't work for me. So now moving on to card number 4. For the background of the card, I have this beautiful floral pattern paper. I'm adding a strip of the white and orange and green plaid paper at the very bottom of the card. First, I'll layer this floral paper on a scalloped rectangle die cut. And this is a die from MFT that retired probably a couple years ago, but it's the perfect size, so I like to use it. Before attaching this plaid strip, I am going to use some of the peel-offs that are included in the kit, using the thinnest width and just putting it along the edge of that pattern paper. I'll wrap the ends behind the back. And I do have this strip the full width of the card, so it's 4 1/4 inches. I'm going to put my card panel onto a card base, and then I can adhere that plaid strip. I decided to use some liquid adhesive to adhere this strip. I'm using Barely Art liquid glue. Then I'll adhere this to the card, making sure to get it nice and straight. One of the advantages to using liquid adhesive is you have a little bit of wiggle room before it adheres down. I cut out another semi-circle die cut, use some gold pearlescent paper for that, and then I have one of the floral ephemera pieces. I'm going to pop that up using some thin foam squares. Try to make sure to get good coverage so there isn't one area that sags, and then I'll attach this to the center of that semicircle. And I decided I'm not going to have a sentiment on the front of this card. I'm going to keep it blank, and then I'll just add a sentiment to the inside once I decide what occasion I'm going to use this card for. I'm going to put a couple small banners in the upper left-hand corner. I cut one a little bit smaller than the other. I'll just layer them. Put that little tiny scrap piece of cardstock before adhering the darker orange banner, just to keep it all level. Then using one of the ribbons that's included in the kit, I tied a bow, and I did this off screen since sometimes I struggle with those bows. Use some small glue dots to put on the back of the bow, and then I'll adhere it to the card underneath the floral ephemera piece. I'm trying to get it nice and straight. I do end up adding one more glue dot underneath the tails of the bow. Even once I have the bow tied, I still end up fussing with it quite a bit. For final finishing touch, I'm adding 2 of the orange glitter enamel dots. just on the banner in the upper left-hand corner. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 4. Now moving on to card number 5. I have some black and green pattern paper and then some of the green cardstock. I'll layer both of these pieces on some black pearlescent cardstock. I'll be stamping the sentiment directly onto this green cardstock, so I'm using my Mini Misty. I did ink it up twice to make sure there was a solid impression. Put some ATG on the back and then add both of these pieces to that black pearlescent cardstock. And generally my cardstock layers are 1/8 of an inch. So I'll attach the green cardstock. Then using some of the black straight peel-offs, I'm going to put one between those two papers to add some separation and contrast. And I'll just use my fingertip X-Acto knife to trim off the edge. I'll put my card front onto a card base, leaving that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. That'll give it a little more contrast. And now I have 3 of the ephemera pieces. There's 3 different sizes of the coffee cups, and I thought it would look really fun to place them all together. So I'm going to start on the left with the smallest cup and work my way toward the right with the cup getting bigger. I'll pop up all of these using some thin foam squares. I'll remove the release paper on this largest cup, and then I'm laying the other 2 out on the card so I can get the placement fairly even. And even though I didn't press down on this first ephemera piece, I wanted to move it to the right just a tiny bit more, but it was stuck down, so that one is not moving. Remove that backing paper on the other 2 cups and adhere all 3 of those. This card reminds me of going to the coffee shop and selecting the size cup you want to purchase. Now, I've mentioned this before in other videos. I do not like the taste of coffee at all. And I know I live in Washington State and I'm not a fan of coffee, but I really enjoy the smell. So whenever my husband has a cup of coffee, sometimes I'll take a whiff of it. When he makes his own coffee at home, he'll even put a little bit in a mug and place it in my craft room if that's where I'm at, so I can smell the coffee. For the rest of the sentiment for the card, I use some gold pearlescent paper and the word dies that are included in the kit. I'm just using some liquid adhesive to adhere them to the upper left-hand corner. So the whole sentiment is so lucky that good coffee and you exist. Finishing touches, use some more of the sequins, and I'm only going to use one color. This time I'm going with the green. I'm also using just the smallest size green. There is a variety included in the mix, but I decided just the small one would work. I'm putting 3 of them around the sentiment in the lower right-hand corner and then 2 under the sentiment in the upper left-hand corner. One thing that's really fun about the pattern paper and ephemera that's included in the kit is it has a look of glitter. Now there is no glitter on it, but I decided to add that extra sparkle with a glitter brush, so I put it just on the 4-leaf clovers on each of the coffee cups. So there is card number 5. Now moving on to card number 6. This is also a fairly simple card. I have some pattern paper with the plaid in the background and then the border with the 4-leaf clovers along the side. I added a strip of solid orange cardstock to the lower portion of the card. I'm going to line that with the peel-offs that are included in the kit. I'll put the medium width along the edge of that orange cardstock. I'll be layering this whole panel on that same dark orange cardstock. So first I'll wrap the ends of the peel-offs behind, put some ATG on the back side of this panel. Just trying to make sure I have those peel-offs nice and straight. And of course, I ran out of my ATG tape. It's a good thing I keep lots of extra rolls on hand. So I'll put my card front onto a card base, leaving that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. I've already gone ahead and stamped and cut out the sentiment. I use the So Lucky again. I use the Mandarin Spice ink by Catherine Pooler. It matches really nicely with the orange on the pattern paper. I'll put some thin foam squares on the back so I can pop those up. And then I'll adhere it to the center of that orange strip. I was trying to get it fairly even to the right and left, but I think I have it toward the right just a little bit more. I also stamped and cut out the small 4-leaf clover. I used some green ink and stamped it on green cardstock. Now, one thing I will mention, there is a coordinating die for this teeny tiny piece, but it's really hard to line up. So I found it easier to cut out that die cut first and then stamp on top of it. I had better luck lining it up by doing it that way. I'm adding some glossy accents to each of those tiny clovers, and then I also wanted to add a little extra glitter to the center of some of the 4-leaf clovers and also on the areas of the pattern paper that it looks like glitter. Now, I know the 4-leaf clovers aren't flowers, so they don't really have that little centerpiece, but there is that look of glitter all over the paper, so I thought it'd be fine to add some extra glitter. And this is Nouveau Glitter Drops, the Golden Sunset color, I believe. So overall, a fairly simple card, but adding those extra little touches like the Nouveau glitter, the peel-offs, and the glossy accents really make a difference. Now moving on to card number 7, I'm using a Mojo Monday sketch. This is number 540. This sketch is designed for a slimline card, although it is a little bit shorter. It'll be 7 inches by 3.5 inches. I'm using some of the black and green plaid paper, then layering that first with some green cardstock and then again with some black cardstock. And then I'll adhere this onto the card panel. And that back panel is actually some of the white pearlescent cardstock. I thought it would look pretty to have that extra shimmer around the outside edge of the card. I'll put my card front onto a card base. And then I can start working on the other elements. I have some 4-leaf clover paper for this piece toward the right, and I'll layer that on some black cardstock. I was first thinking of cutting a fishtail at the very bottom, but I didn't want to cut into that large green 4-leaf clover. So I changed my mind and just left it as the measurements indicate on the sketch. Instead of the circle, I'm using a scallop circle die cut. I used the gold pearlescent cardstock for that, gluing it down using some liquid adhesive, and then I'll add 2 of the ephemera pieces to the center of that circle. I have a stack of, I don't know if they're cookies or little biscuits, and then a heart, which might also be a cookie, not really sure. I think it's a cookie and it has the green frosting or icing on top. So I am going to pop up both of those ephemera pieces using the thin foam squares. I'll put that stack of cookies on the left, and then the heart will go to the right. It will overlap slightly, so I made sure not to put any foam dimension toward the left of that heart. Instead, I put a drop of liquid adhesive. After attaching it, I decided to add 1 more foam square to the upper left-hand side of the heart. So now I'll work on the sentiment, and I already have everything set up in my Mini Misti. I stamped out the word lucky using some green ink, and then I'm adding the rest of the sentiment, so it'll be I'm lucky to call you friend. Before adhering this piece to the card, I will layer it on some green cardstock. I'm trying to make sure that cardstock layer is fairly even. Put some ATG on the back and adhere it to that matted layer. And I did need to trim off just a tiny bit. Now before I adhere it to the card, I'm also going to put that scrap piece of cardstock on the very right side. And then I'll put some liquid adhesive on the back and adhere it in place. So I am following this sketch fairly closely. For finishing touches, we'll use some more of the green enamel dots. I'm going to put 2 of them in the upper right-hand corner. I'll put 2 in the lower left-hand corner and then 1 more near the sentiment. I'll also pull out that glitter brush and add it to the flowers and the bow on the ephemera pieces. And the last time I used the glitter brush, it came out super fast, so I did make sure to test it on some scrap cardstock first. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 7. I really like how this one turned out. Moving on to card number 8. I'll be using a card sketch from MFT. This is number 174. I have some green, gold, and black plaid paper for the background. I'm going to layer this on some of the gold pearlescent cardstock. And I should have cut out the center. I'm not sure why I didn't this time. I'm going to layer that piece on some black cardstock and then add this panel onto a card base. For the 3-inch square that's indicated on the sketch, I'm using a 1.5-inch strip of pattern paper that I have left over. Since there's going to be a banner going across the center, it was real easy to use, and I'll be able to hide the fact that I didn't have a 3-inch square. So I'm just attaching these onto some black cardstock. I'll adhere it to my card. And then for that banner that's going to go across the center, I'm using some more black cardstock. And I'll just cut some fishtails on the ends. And on this sketch, it does have that banner going off the edge of the card, but I do make mine shorter since I want it to be able to fit inside an A2 size envelope. I'll be adding those small pieces of cardstock to the outside edge just to keep everything nice and level. And it only goes off of that square just a tiny bit, so these are pretty small scrap pieces. And I realized one side needed to be pushed over just slightly. I'll put some liquid adhesive on the back and then adhere it to the card. And I just lay it on the card to make sure I got everything in place. For those 3 circles, I'm going to use 3 of the ephemera pieces that have 4-leaf clovers. And I also cut out 3 circle die cuts. I have some white pearlescent paper for those. They are going to overlap just slightly. I wanted to make sure the ephemera pieces were smaller than the circle die cuts. I'll use some liquid adhesive to adhere the ephemera pieces to the circle die cuts. I'm going to lay them out on the card for spacing. For the outer 2 circles, I'm going to adhere them directly down using some liquid adhesive, and then I'll pop up the center 4-leaf clover using some foam dimensional tape. There really is a lot of ephemera included in the kit, but if you feel you want another ephemera pack, Lizi is selling those as an extra. You can also purchase extras of the enamel dots, the pattern paper, and larger bags of the sequin mix. I will have links for the add-ons as well as the kit in the description box below. So before I attach that center circle, I wanted to work on the sentiment. I'll lay it on my card just so I have the placement correct, but I didn't want to have that extra dimension to mess with stamping out my sentiment. Using my mini MISTI just to make sure I get it straight and a good impression, I stamped out "and so very grateful," which doesn't make a lot of sense until you add the rest of the sentiment. So I'm going to add the word lucky to the top, and I'll also use the word I'm. So my full sentiment will be "I'm lucky and so very grateful." Now this wasn't my original plan on the card. I was going to mask out the word and just use the sentiment "so very grateful." But then I went and put it in my mini MISTI and stamped it out and completely forgot. So now I needed to add the words "I'm lucky," otherwise that sentiment made no sense. Although at this point I still haven't decided to add the word I'm attaching that center 4-leaf clover. Then after looking at the card, I decided, yes, I need to add one more word. It'll balance out that full sentiment. So this is a very tiny stamp and it kept sticking to my fingers. Eventually I did get it on there nice and straight. For finishing touches on the card, I decided to add another bow using one of the ribbons that's included in the kit. So this is one of the dark greens. I've already tied my bow just so you don't have to painfully watch me try to tie a bow. Put some glue dots on the back, and I was trying to figure out placement if I want it on the glitter paper or underneath, and I decided to go underneath. Add a couple more of the glue dots underneath the tails on the bow, just like I did on the previous card. The glue dots will help the ribbon stay attached to the card and also keep it in the correct position. See, that one tail just kept moving on me. For embellishments, I'm using the gold sequins. This is the smallest size. I'll put one of them underneath the lower sentiment and then two in the upper left-hand corner. I like to lay them out on my card first, then I can get my embellishment one to pick them up, add that drop of liquid adhesive, and then press them in place. Sometimes it does take a few seconds for the liquid adhesive to adhere, but once it dries, those will stay in place. Then one final finishing touch, I'm going to pull out that glitter brush and add it to each of the 4-leaf clovers. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 8. Now moving on to card number 9. The card sketch is from OWH. It's number 219. I'm using the same pattern paper from card number 1 and also adding in this green stripe paper for the lower portion of the card. The background of the card is the light gray cardstock that's included in the kit. And I'll layer everything using some black cardstock. For the thin strip that goes across the card, I'm using some of the orange pearlescent cardstock. First, I'll put my card front onto a card base, and I'm not going to have any of the white card base showing this time. I didn't want to lose any of that pattern paper in the background. I'll use some liquid adhesive to attach this pearlescent cardstock. Do my best to get it nice and straight. And then I can start working on the image and the sentiment. And I just had to trim off a little bit of that pearlescent cardstock. Now, this is very rare, but I am going to do some quick Copic coloring. This is a darling little coffee cup. It matches the ephemera and the pattern paper. So I decided to color this super fast. I don't color very often since it strains my eyes, but I figured I could handle this tiny little coffee cup this time. I have a gray for the lid. I'm using a green that matches the pattern paper for the main body of the cup. I don't do any blending at all when I color. I just go over each of the areas at least twice so it has a nice smooth finish. I'm going to use the coordinating die and cut this out. And I actually colored 2 of them. I just did one off screen. I have a stitched circle die cut. I've already stamped out part of the sentiment. Then I'm going to add some of the scrap cardstock on the upper and lower portion of this circle where it goes over that orange strip of paper. Trying to get the correct size before I glue these down. Once those cardstock pieces are attached, I'll put some liquid adhesive on the back and adhere it to the card. I'm trying to make sure to line it up so that orange strip goes through that gap. And I want my sentiment to be nice and straight as well. I'll have the 2 coffee cups toward the left on that circle die cut, and then I'll add the word lucky on top. So the L is going to go over that very left coffee cup. Use some liquid adhesive to adhere that in place, and then I'll put some liquid adhesive on the back of the lucky die cut. And I used some more of the gold mirror cardstock for that. It adds such a lovely shine. I can attach the L, and just that tiny bit is going to go over the very bottom of that coffee cup. And then for the second coffee cup, I'm going to pop it up using some thin foam squares. And final finishing touch, add a few of the enamel dots to the upper left-hand corner. As indicated on the sketch, I just decided to use 2 different sizes of the enamel dots. I'll also add that tiny touch of sparkle to the 4-leaf clovers on the coffee cups. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 9. Now moving on to card number 10. I have the green glitter pattern paper for the background. I'll add a thin strip of this black and green plaid paper to the lower portion of the card. Using some of the gold holographic peel-offs, I'll add 1 on either side of this plaid paper. I love the holographic peel-offs. They are so sparkly. I'll wrap the ends around the back and then put ATG tape on the back of this panel and adhere it to some black cardstock. If I didn't mention earlier, the kit does include some solid colored cardstock, but I did bring in some extra cardstock since I like to add a lot of layers to my cards. I'm going to put my card front onto a card base. And for the ephemera, I'm using these fun green shoes with the little 4-leaf clover on the inside. I'll attach them to a stitched circle die cut. I use some more of the gold pearlescent cardstock for that. I'm going to pop up the little shoes using some foam squares. Make sure to get good coverage. Then I'll adhere them to the center of that circle die cut. Already stamped and cut out the sentiment. So I have lucky to know you. Use some green ink for the word lucky. I'm going to pop this up using some of those thin foam squares. For the rest of the sentiment, I stamped it on some green cardstock. I'll adhere the word lucky first, then put some liquid adhesive on the back of the rest of the sentiment and tuck it in underneath the word lucky. For embellishments on the card, I'm using some more of the 4-leaf clover wood pieces, this time 1 in each size. To add some color to the wood pieces, I'm smushing them into the Mardi Gras colored ink by Catherine Pooler. And I'm trying my best not to get my fingers in there so they don't turn green. Since the ink was still wet, I decided to add Love From Lizi's Glossy Clear embossing powder to each of the wood pieces. So I'm just tapping off the extra. Then I'll get my heat gun and some tweezers out and melt that embossing powder. And it makes it super shiny. Now I didn't end up with a nice smooth finish. It had a bumpy finish instead. So it might have been better to use glossy accents instead of the embossing powder, but I still like how they turned out. So I'll adhere them to my card. I'm going to put 2 of them in the lower left-hand corner and then 1 in the upper right-hand corner. And I wanted to add just something extra to the card. It needed some sparkle. So I pulled out the mini star peel-offs. This is the gold glitter color. We'll put 2 of them above the sentiment, 1 near the lower left-hand side of the sentiment, and then I'll add a few of the teeny tiny ones around the shoes. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 10. Now here's just a quick recap of the 10 cards I made using Love From Lizi's February 2021 card kit. The theme is So Lucky. I really enjoyed all the fun ephemera and pattern paper that's included in this kit. As I'm recording the voiceover, the kit is still available. I will have links provided in the description box if you are interested in purchasing the kit or signing up to subscribe. This is a monthly card kit and they do sell out every single month. Love From Lizi card kits are so much fun and I always look forward to mine. Now here's everything that I still have left over from the kit. I have 1 full sheet of cardstock and 2 pieces of some other colors, quite a few of the pattern paper scraps, and then 11 full sheets of pattern paper. You get a lot in the kit. I still have almost a full sheet of the beautiful peel-offs, quite a bit of the ephemera. There's the enamel dots, the coordinating dies, and the stamp set. I have some more of the ribbon, the washi tape, lots of the sequins. I also have 6 more of the 4-leaf clover wood pieces. I did ink up 3 of them. So still lots left over to make more cards. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.